Hey Chandler, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Doing good. Just finished walking the dog.
Yeah, just let her out. And then
Nice.
whenever we get or like whenever I'm in the apartment for the first time in a little bit, she I'll hide somewhere in the apartment and she sniffs me out. So we can play hide and seek. So that's what I was doing for a
Oh,
couple
what kind of
minutes.
dog do you have?
She's a shepherd boxer mix. So she's
Wow.
goofy and stubborn about being goofy. So
She like a
that's
big
a good
dog or she
mix.
like a...
She's like 77 pounds.
Good Lord. Oh, dang.
Yeah, she's a good size.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Well, real quick, Chandler, just tell us a little bit like kind of like who you are and stuff, just for the people who may not be familiar. I mean, we both know, but um
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm Chandler. I'm originally from Columbia, Missouri, and went to KU for 5 years, just graduated. I had a great time there, loved it, loved being coached by Coach Witt, great team there and everything. And while I was there, um, ran some pretty good times, got to go to
yeah.
NCAA championships a couple times, and this past time got fifth in the 10,000 and then qualified for the Olympic trials and got 11th there. And my newest and almost my proudest accolade now, sub four as of 3 days ago, two
Heck
days
yeah, I
ago.
saw
So
that. Yeah, congrats Yeah, on that. congrats.
yeah, thanks. That was a lot of been a long time coming, I think. So I was really excited to get that. So
Yeah, man. What race? I can't remember what race did you do it at?
it was just like this kind of local mile got put on by the Chicago Area Runners Association. So I'm in Chicago right now. I'm working. But yeah, they were putting it on, and I ran the Sunset Tour by Sound Running earlier
Oh
this
yeah.
summer,
Nice,
just
yeah.
trying to capitalize on being in pretty good shape after coming off of KU, and this was my last chance to kind of run a quick race before I took a break. So I wanted to hop into one this past weekend, and there's one in Chicago, which was perfect. So.
Awesome.
Uh,
Did you Heck
uh,
yeah, have any kind
uh,
of
man.
like pacers for that at all or anything?
Yeah, so my one of my buddies, former teammate at KU, Sam Hubert, he came out and he paced me for it, and he was sleeping on my couch for a couple of days out. But he got me through 800. I think we came through about two flat, 201. So he did a pretty good job, and it was a pretty iffy track. I mean, there's some
Uh,
asphalt poking through and everything,
oh my
so
goodness.
it made it feel like kind of like the old glory days of the mile and the U.S. distance running. So it made it just kind of that electric feel, and
Uh,
it was a great time.
yeah, that's awesome. yeah, that sounds like so much fun. I got a question. So, I've looked through like a lot, kind of like your high school times and your college times. Um, and your progression is something I kind of wanted to talk about from high school to like kind of like the level you're at now. Like in high school, it looked like your PRs were like you were about 4:13 in the mile and was it 9:19 in the two?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Um,
yeah, like kind of take us through that progression because you went from that and like went to KU and yeah, you had like a really like just solid progression throughout pretty much your whole career. Like I mean you were I mean like as far as like time like high school guys now like you may not have been like the top guy in in high school, but now you're going getting 11th in the trials, fifth at NCAA's. So I guess kind of like what like helped that progression, was it just natural? Like was there stuff you changed in your training? Just stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. I think part of it was I think I was pretty undertrained coming out of high school. I wasn't able to really hit a lot of mileage when I was young. I would just kind of deal with shin splints or stress reactions or, you know, anything like could go wrong would go wrong, I feel like. So my high
Mhm.
school coach was good about um, instead of doing the mileage, we would do kind of a lot of higher intensity stuff. So Um, yeah, I mean, coming out of college or coming into college, my highest mileage week I think I'd ever done was 40 something. And, that the first year I was at KU, I made a pretty good jump. And I think there's two factors to that. I think one was just being able to get consistent over the summer and hit some decent mileage without, having any setbacks. For whatever reason, I was able to stay healthy heading into that. And that was a big part of it. And then the second thing for me was coming into KU, getting some competition and practice. And, you know, when you settle into like a group of guys that, you're all running the same base run pace every day, and, you're not dealing with training alone or doing intervals alone or anything like that. You got a good group of guys around you. It's way easier for you to start to match them in performance. So I came in, and my goal was to travel. So that was my main goal. And so I just would do what the guys who were traveling were doing. And I started to see, some nothing crazy too. I wasn't up in my mileage 40 miles a week like, crazy than anything like that, but just doing what I could, staying within myself, but doing what I can to kind of put myself up against those guys and kind of compete with them on a day-to-day basis. And then it paid off, and I was able to compete with them in races too. And then uh, after my freshman year, there was a little bit of kind of a plateau, I guess. I made a pretty good jump my freshman year, and for a little bit, it was definitely like I just wasn't improving as much as I expected to after, going from a 15:26 5K runner to a 24:06 8K runner. In my head, I was like, well, I'm just going to keep going and be insane by
Yeah.
the time I'm a senior. But that's not exactly how it works. It ebbs and flows, and you'll plateau, you'll regress, and then you'll progress some more, and then it's going to do the same thing all over again. So it was definitely just trusting the training and staying consistent through those years as much as I could. I would deal with an injury every now and then. I'd get overzealous in training and go too hard, or I'd get sick or something like that. And so, those setbacks, when they come, you just have to just keep consistent as best as you can and keep going. And I think for that last, jump that I made to the next level was just a result of, several years of just consistency and trying to put together as many, stretches of training as I could, as long as a stretch of training as I could without missing a day. And, it finally paid off my fourth year at KU. When I ran 13:28, it was really just the culmination of 3 years of me feeling like I wasn't getting anywhere, and then finally all of a sudden, it's 30 seconds, but in reality it's you're getting there, and then you're going a little backwards, and then you're going forwards more. And so it definitely was a big jump in terms of results, but it was a lot was going on behind the scenes to get there.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I see like and that's awesome. I think that's what consistent theme we hear in a lot of the stories of those like progressions is just the consistency. Um do you have any like I like to always like to ask this. Do you have any, like the term one percenters, like 1% things that people just stay consistent with and add up? Do you have any of those? Like it could be supplements, stretching, anything like that?
Man, yeah, I mean, I've started to put a good emphasis on, just recovery. Really, my thing is more just like I don't want to miss a day. So
Hmm.
that was kind of what was my mantra was, it's fine if that your training for the day is not running, because recovery is just as important. So if the goal is to not run that day, then don't run that day. And if the goal is to get anything in that day, get something in that day. Um, and with that, you got to keep in mind that just progress is progress. And, you know, even if let's say your goal was run 10 miles that day and you weren't feeling good, so you only run six, that's still six better than nothing. So when I say
Mhm.
like don't miss a day, it's do what you can every single day. And all of
Mhm.
that is just gonna add up. So, it's if you can't get 8 hours of sleep because you have a homework assignment or a test the next day, you're getting 4 hours instead. Well, that's better than getting none. It's definitely like, yeah, just kind of realizing that, you know, even like a day that's not as good as another one, as long as you don't miss it, it's still going to do a little bit for you. So not
Mhm.
every
Right.
day you're going to get 1% better. Some days you're going to get 0.1% better, but that's still getting better. So I
Yeah.
think that was something that I kind of took to heart, and that's kind of my approach to training.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Awesome.
That's really good
Yeah.
consistency. I wanted to kind of talk about, so you have a pretty unique perspective on, or like, I guess, experience. You've reached that pretty much the highest level a collegiate runner can reach, like, or pretty close. And so I know there's hundreds of collegiate runners who would love to, get to go to some of the meets and compete the way that you've competed. But can you tell us a little bit, like, just like the emotions that have come with competing at that high of a level, and going and getting fit at NCAA's, and just I mean going to the Olympic trials, competing at that, like how, like, what has been your like thoughts and emotions, and just like the whole way you've like felt about all of it?
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. I think one of the cool things in terms of my story is, until 2 years ago, I was one of those people where I was looking at these races and just watching them on TV, and I'm watching Nico and Kai and these guys duke it out in races, and then the next thing I know, I'm lining up against them. So I
Yeah.
think I think that was pretty surreal for me, especially at like my first regionals and nationals experience. It definitely, I think, it might have wigged me out a little bit. Like, well, I'm here. Like, man, these guys are, they've been on the scene for a while and I haven't. And um, I think that's a pretty normal experience to have for your first time. And then, the more you get to be around those guys, the more you get to know them, the more they kind of become your peers. So for me, like getting to chat with Habtum at regionals this year, in Arkansas, that kind of takes away some of the, I guess, fear a little bit. That's like, oh well, maybe I'm not as good as these guys. When you get to chat with them and get to know them, they're just you know another guy. They're another goofy distance runner that you get to know. So,
Right.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think that was a pretty cool part of my experience, and I definitely still take a moment to take it all in. I remember I was standing on the line next to Alex Phillip at the trials, and they're announcing all the names. They're announcing Paul Chalimo and Grant Fisher and Woody Kincaid and all these amazing runners. And I just lean over to him and I go, "This is pretty cool," and he just laughed at me. But it is like, I think if you don't take it in, like you're missing out on the experience. And
Mhm.
you know, just as much as I want to win and to be successful, part of the success is enjoying the experience and getting to feel those emotions, and getting to stand next to these guys that I've been watching for 10 years run incredible times. Grant Fisher, amazing runner in high school, amazing runner in college, and I watched him for a long time, and now I'm lined up against him, and I'm
Uh,
doing strides with him and stuff like that. So I think you definitely have to take it in, because if you're missing out on the experience, that's half of why you want to do what you want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I bet you scared Grant a little bit lining up to him. I bet you're thinking about him. He's looking over and sees the guy from KU. I bet he's shaking a little
Yeah,
bit when you
I'm
walk
sure
up
he
to
was shaking. Yeah.
the. But man, what just another quick question kind of relating to that, like who is the runner, like who's a runner out there that like has been like the most like just kind of like surreal to line up against and to like you look over and you're like, man, I can't believe I'm lined up next to this guy right now.
Um, Man, that's a good question. Um,
There could be a couple too. Like honestly, I mean,
yeah.
it's however you want to
I
answer
mean,
it.
Grant, Paul, like Paul Chalimo, those guys obviously. I think one of the smaller ones, like I feel like the first race that I really watched, like when I started to get into running, like in high school, was NXN, and it was when Casey Klinger won his second title. So getting to race against him, I feel like is kind of that feeling for me. That's like,
Oh
wow, like
yeah.
one of the first races I really remember watching is against this guy. So yeah, kind of the same feeling as getting to race against Grant or Drew Hunter or one of those guys.
Yeah, that is pretty yeah, that's pretty sick. And the uh like dudes you've watched on TV and like the like guys who are like legends in high school and like because I'm sure like uh did you watch much running when you were in high school?
Yeah, so I kind of started to get more and more into it like my sophomore and junior year. It was really my sophomore year. Um, so yeah, those guys from that year with Cooper Tier, Reed Brown, Casey Klinger, like all those guys were kind of the first high school class that I really paid attention to. So getting to kind of know like some of the guys a little bit better from there. Sam, who I mentioned, paced the mile. He's at Virginia Tech now, so he knows Cooper Tier a little bit, and so it's funny to see like these connections form because the running world is smaller than it seems when you're in high school. So
Mhm.
it's cool to make those connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure you've beat a couple of the guys that you used to like watch and look up to. I bet that's pretty like awesome to cross the
Yeah.
line and turn out like, holy cow, I just like beat a dude who I've watched race like growing up. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely been moments of that where it's like he used to whoop me like
yeah.
5 years ago, and now not so much. And it's a good feeling of just making like feeling like I'm doing the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking forward a little bit, you said you're gonna take some time off now here, but what's kind of your plans with running after your time off? I've heard some rumors about potentially joining a track club.
Yeah. I don't want to. I'm not sure yet what group or anything I'm leaning towards, but I'm not done. Like I feel like still have unfinished business, on the track and with running it as a whole. Um, I've talked to a few people, and they're like, "Well, you'll feel at peace when you're done with it," and I'm not really at peace yet. So I feel like there's more to be done, and so I'm definitely going to keep training. I've been talking to a few groups, and you know it's cool to go through that experience. I feel like everyone dreams of being the pro athlete and getting to have this opportunity. So I'm not gonna squander it or anything like that. Kind of like I was talking about with the races. Part of why we do this is just to have the experience of it. It's something
Right.
that everyone thinks about, dreams about, and so getting to have that experience is a big part of it for me.
Yeah. Is there like a specific like goal you have that you're still wanting to achieve then?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to keep getting better and get to the point where I can compete, with those top guys in the US. Yeah, I feel like it'd be one thing if I had gone to the trials and felt like I just was out of it and was just out of my league, I guess. But
Right.
coming off of that, I feel like, maybe if I run it slightly differently or if I can hold on to the pace for a little bit longer, I can be in that conversation for that top 8 group. So, I feel like there's some work to be done for sure, but I think I can get to the point where I'm competing with those top guys and, hopefully making a world team or an Olympic team in a few years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. So I got kind of a fun question for you. This is something that I've always kind of been curious about, and once again, I'll talk about how you kind of have a unique perspective on some of the stuff. I've always wondered, like, so they talk about like rivalries and stuff in track, and how there isn't a ton of like you don't hear much about it. I mean, there's the Josh Kerr, Ingebrigtsen stuff right now, and even that seems to have kind of, you know, died down a bit. But man, is there any collegiate guys or even like professional guys you've competed against that are just like some smack talkers? They know they're good and they're gonna like or like they're chatting on the line or some or like after a race or something like shooting some shots
There's
or something at you.
Yeah, there's some guys. I'll leave it at this. They've rubbed me the wrong way before.
Uh-huh.
It's like I'll try to say something to them after the race and they'll ignore me and stuff like that. I won't throw out any names, but
Right, yeah.
there's definitely been some instances of I'll go up to someone and be like, "Oh, great race," and it's like they just won't say anything back to me, and it's like, okay, well, I finished like right behind you, or I beat you. It's like you don't need to be like so upset about this.
Yeah.
You can cool off. We're not running right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is pretty funny. Okay, on the opposite end, who have you met and like hung out with? They're like, dang, this guy's pretty cool. Like this is kind of like not like who you thought they were gonna be.
Um, Man, well, I talked about talking to Habtum Samuel
Yeah,
a little bit. It's just the nicest guy ever, and
yeah, he
I
seems
feel
like it.
like getting beaten by him a couple times, I could be salty about it, but like I root for that guy so
Uh,
much. Like he's a great guy. When I saw he wasn't, selected for the Olympic team, I was just mad. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah, he's someone that I'll root for, for a long time. And um yeah, I mean, really the majority of the guys, are just kind of like these goofy distance runners. Like I said earlier,
yeah,
Right.
like they're just like you know people kind of get this idea that these elite runners are like something way different than they are. They're like so serious all the time and cocky and all this, but really like most of them are just the great like personalities that you remember from high school who would do something random on a run or like get lost or something like that. Like there's so many guys that are just like that. I got to meet Hobbs Kessler at the
yeah. Oh
trials,
man,
and
he's one of
he
my
was just
favorite
the
runners, man.
he's
Yeah.
just the nicest guy. Like
Uh-huh.
I had a hard time like thinking like, okay, this guy's like 2 or 3 years younger than me because he was just like so outgoing and like just walked up like, oh Chandler, how's it going? All this stuff
Uh,
because him and Bryce Hopple are good friends and Bryce and I have trained together a little bit. So he came up to me and was like, how's it going? Oh, you must be Coach Witt. Like, great to meet you. All this stuff and. It was cool to see him and just not at all what you would expect from, a 20-year-old. So
yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I've had some like is it surreal experiences like that. I raced at the Valentine race up in Boston. Were you there for that one?
Uh, yeah, I went to. I think I was at that one at Boston.
Think it
I
was the
can't remember. I get them
10th,
all mixed
February
up.
10th or something. Yeah, they have like
Yeah.
five of them. But I was up there and yeah, man, I raced the mile up there, and man, Craig Engels was there, and like I mean, obviously he's like one of the most popular dudes in running. But I mean, I walked by and like. like and just saw him like talking to people and like he had like so, some fans coming up and like wanting pictures and stuff. And he seems exactly like how he is in interviews or in like his like the persona he has on like on the internet. He seems like just that way in real life. And it's like kind of cool. I was like you walk around and realize like all these fast dudes are like man, you're just like your average like high school teammates, but they can run a mile in 350 or a 5K
Right.
in 13,
Yeah,
30 or
I
something
mean,
like that. It's a
that's been exactly my experience. Like
uh,
so many of these guys are exactly the same people that, made you like love being on the cross country team. It's the same personality. And the other thing is that the track isn't big enough of a popular
yeah.
sport for like there to be a different personality, on
Mm,
the cameras and not on camera because there's not that many cameras. So
right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I do love that about track. You can like most runners, I mean, you can like just do like a high schooler can go DM like most like professional runners and most of them will get you an answer. And so I do love that about the sport. And so
yeah, definitely.
um yeah, man. So as we're wrapping this up, I've what the last question I want to ask you. This is another kind of fun one. So you can pick one runner like ever, live, dead, retired, still going. One guy to go out and hit like a long run with. Um, an easy one like learning chat with. We're not talking to you're ripping or anything like that. But
Yeah.
who would you choose? You can have a couple if you really want to, but man, who you going out hitting a long run with?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think one of my favorite runners for a long time has been Emil Zatopek.
Yeah.
He ran for Czechoslovakia, I think, in the 50s. And he's such a fascinating figure to me just because you know, he ran the 5K and 10K at the Olympics and was just like, yeah, I'll go run the marathon in a couple days.
Yeah.
I'll run my
Right.
debut marathon and wins it. I mean,
He
anybody
set the world
who
record too, didn't he, in that race?
I think so. So
Yeah.
anyone who's that interesting, it'd be fun to talk to for a little bit. I think it
Yeah.
would have to be one of those guys from
Uh-huh.
back before like the sport got so scientific, I guess, because they were all just like going purely off of what they felt was like the right thing for them to do in their training. Like a guy like Pavo Nurmi who would run like 6 world records in one day or something like that,
Yeah.
and Roger Bannister,
Hmm.
wasn't like none of these guys are professional runners. None of them really have any idea what they're doing, but they're going out and training and seeing crazy amounts of success just doing whatever. So I think it would definitely have to be one of those guys from way back when and get to kind of pick their mind a little bit and see, well, why do you do this? Why did you do this? And because those guys were also they were doing it just because they loved it and they got to
Uh-huh.
tinker with stuff and kind of
Right.
experiment on themselves. And I think that'd be a fun talk to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
of
an
course.
awesome answer. I agree. That's a good one. A lot of yeah, those guys are really interesting. Even moving into the 70s, I've listened to a lot of podcasts with like Frank Shorter and just some of the guys from the Prefontaine era. And yeah, those guys are I mean, things started getting more scientific around then, but still like just hearing man, some of the stuff those dudes is just gnarly. They do some sick stuff. But
Well, yeah,
uh
it's like how were they doing what they did
yeah.
week in and week out, and also just like seeing success. I mean, like pro runners now are racing like 4 or 5 times a year, and guys like Frank Shorter or like any one of those guys were racing like 4 or 5 times every 2 weeks and running
Right.
just amazing times, and yeah, just fascinating to me to see how it's grown and how all those guys were innovators in their own right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, that it's super cool part of the running history. Well, man, we're about to run out of time, but thank you so much for coming on, dude. It was awesome to get to pick your brain a little bit, hear about your just your experience with it. I loved just the topic of, you know, really like professional runners are just normal runners. They're just a little quicker than the average guy. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're excited to hear about your future, man. We're gonna keep watching you. We're excited to see, hear some news about where your professional career is going. And yeah, man, good luck with the rest of it. We're
Yeah,
excited. Maybe one day we'll get to have you on again as an Olympian. So
that'd be great. Yeah, thanks for
yeah,
having me. It's I love talking about running, so anytime.
absolutely. Yeah, we do too. Well, we appreciate it, man. Thanks again.
All
Yeah,
right.
good luck, man.
Thanks.
All right. You have a good night, dude.
All
See
right,
ya.
you too.